Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Sorry about the late start, but I want to welcome you to Bramasol's ongoing series of webinars focused on various finance, transformation, and compliance topics. My name is Jim Hunt, and I'll be your webinar host today. I'm filling in for John Froelich, who is traveling. This is our first webinar of the new year, and we're looking forward to presenting an average of 2 webinars a month throughout 2020. So keep an eye out for announcements regarding lots of new and exciting topics. Today, we're going to talk about the latest updates to SAP's revenue accounting and reporting application, with particular attention on new features and capabilities. We'll also be addressing how these RAR updates can mesh with S/4HANA 1909 release, and we'll drill down to explore some of the implementation issues to help you chart out your forward path. We've got a great team of presenters joining us today, including Gerold Wellenhofer, Project Manager at SAP Germany, who has responsibility for RAR, Financial Accounting, and Analytics. Steve Stone, Director of Service Delivery at Bramasol, and Jacek Dudkowski, Managing Consultant of Digital Transformation and RAR at Bramasol. First, let's take a look at some housekeeping items. As always, we encourage everybody to engage with us throughout the conversation. You can do that by using the questions box on your screen to ask questions. Please feel free to ask any question. We'll do our best to answer them at the end of the webinar. And if we can't answer a question in real time, we'll take it offline and we'll get back to you. In addition, we invite you to make use of the various resources and communication channels on our website at www.bramasol.com. These include access to our full library of webinars, ebooks, podcasts, how-to videos, and other resources. You can also stay up to date on the latest news, events, and other breaking issues by following us on social media, including Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. One very useful resource is the ability to download videos of any previous webinars, which currently includes a total of over 60 webinar sessions that we've done over the past few years. They cover a wide range of finance, compliance, and transformation topics. So with those items taken care of, let's jump right into today's webinar. To start with, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Gerold, who's going to do an overview and update about the latest developments regarding SAP RAR. So Gerold, I'll pass you the presentation and you can take it away.
Thank you so much for introducing myself. Can you see my slide? Just notify me once you see those slides. Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy to present now the latest updates from revenue accounting and reporting, which dates back in 1909. So a couple of weeks old. First, our usual little disclaimer: if we touch future developments, which always might be subject to change. I like to start with the whole journey with S4 and revenue accounting. You know that we started already in 2018 to make revenue accounting as an integral part of S4. That was back in 1809, and we achieved that by also having feature parity with the revenue accounting add-on. So on top you see the corresponding support packages or feature packages, which sort of were then basically the basis for the S4 delivery for 1809, and also for the feature pack 1 of 1809, which relates to the feature pack 7 of RAR 1.3. Now we have still regular support packages in revenue accounting, which in general are also brought up to the S4 releases. And we had so far a quarterly frequency of those support packages. For the add-on, this will reduce a little to about a half-year support package cycle for the add-on. Now, we covered already that we have sort of synchronized those features. Some more organizational stuff relates how you get access to either the add-on or also to the embedded S4 release. You know this already from the add-on, that we quickly view at the business cases, use cases, and so you have to register here, and then once you have asked for or to get revenue accounting, you sort of implement a node, and by this you get access to such to our functionality. All right, now we have, of course, looked in the use cases and viewed the different major improvements, and especially in the high volume area, we have seen that there was a high demand also for revenue accounting to look into those use cases. In addition, not only the volume, but also requirement with respect to day-based revenue recognition, which is especially relevant for change processes within a month. So those use cases got quite prominent, and we sort of looked how to realize those use cases. And finally, once we sort of investigated further, we saw that this requires a change of our fundamental contract management. And so we saw that doing so, we need to introduce a type of new contract management, which we now call optimized contract management. This is coexisting with the existing contract management. So basically, you can decide by a BRF Plus rule whether you would like to go the classic contract management or the optimized contract management. However, some use cases, and this will relate to those high volume and the day-based scenarios. So those scenarios are only possible in the optimized contract management. We are not yet there currently to have a full parity with the features. So, for example, cost management is not yet possible with the optimized contract management, but we are planning to also realize that with the next release. And later on, we see also a couple of other features which are only available on the optimized contract management. So I think, excuse me, so the general direction for us is, of course, to have still a parallel world with the classical contract management. But for new contracts, if the features are available, we rather think that the optimized contract management would be the better choice. Okay, I covered everything what is sort of here on this slide. Maybe I should also mention the performance, which of course I had mentioned with the high volume scenarios, but the optimized contract management also sort of has a better performance, especially for the high volume scenarios. And we have also a little release note where everything is described. Now let's look into additional features. Some of those features which are then available in the optimized contract management. So one case is related to a termination, which is done in a way that already more revenue is recognized than it will be possible to get from the customer due to the early termination. So due to the allocation, you already got more revenue that you then are finally entitled to receive from the invoices to the customers. And so if you terminate such a contract, you need to record termination expenses. And this is one of the scenarios which we have realized with the optimized contract management. So for the next couple of features, I like to go into the system. Just a second. And you can now see the Fiori Launchpad. And this is also something new and unique for the optimized contract management. So another differentiation for a nice UI, if you like to have this one, this is coming with the optimized contract management. And maybe you are already familiar with such Fiori elements, and you have the different features, which of course can be controlled by assignment to your role, to your user. And you see some of those features in our Fiori elements. Now, I like now to start with a little overview. So I go to this revenue account overview. I did this already up front in order to avoid a little waiting times. And you see that we can combine here with this overview some elements, like you can have an overview about the recognized revenue. You could have a view on the contract status, on the performance obligation, the top sellers, the best business partners, and also the revenue trend. And here down you have quick links, so you can also go to manage revenue accounting contracts, just to give you a first glimpse what is possible here. And here we have already quite a volume, so the system is selecting something. I want to view now a specific contract. And so I go now here to this contract. I just need to press go now. And here comes my contract. And then I get a view out of my performance obligation once it's loaded. So I have here two performance obligations. I get here my general view, posted revenue, recognized revenue, contract status. I can navigate to the revenue schedule, which is also accessed in a much more performant way here. And so you have in here a little view on the time-based performance obligation and the proposed postings in the different months. That is, of course, I could navigate further. Another highlight I would like to demo for now the optimized contract management is the analytics. And so the analytics, the overview page is already a little part of the analytics. But so underneath we have a very powerful way to now very flexibly create contracts Now I'm unfortunately in a logon screen, which I have not expected, so I need to go back to my fallback. Just a second. So I prepared that if this happens. So we have seen we have seen our revenue schedule. Now I like to go to an analytical approach, and you here see a kind of report which shows the disaggregation of revenue. That was the solution and the area where I wanted to navigate to. So you see here this way to define a report yourself, and here the result of this report. And you can very flexibly now add dimensions if you like to define a new dimension in the report. So this is the HANA performance, so very optimized here for data selection. And for example, if you like to add the performance type, you just drag it from here, from the dimensions into the rows, and then you achieve. So we have seen that here, and now you have your performance obligation types here, and the revenues are then separated by the performance obligation type. Yeah, so the analytics is also one through the motivations to go for the optimized contract management, and besides the new UI and additional features, and also performance. Having said this, I like to return now back. So back to you, Jim. And Jacek.
Thank you, Gerold. Let me take back the presentation. We're going to go to Jacek now, and he's going to talk about some implementation issues, when to use optimized contract management, how to enable it, and those kinds of issues. Jacek, I'll go ahead and walk through your slides if that's okay. So
before I start, Jim, I understand that Steve might have joined, so I just want to make sure to check. Steve, are you with us?
I have. Yes, I am, Jacek. Thank you, and I apologize. I am out in the field as well, but I'll let you begin, and I'll chime in where I can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Jim. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, just take it away, Steve and Jacek.
So we really wanted to add for a panelist, again, underlying what Gerold showed is the likely scenarios for optimized, specifically for optimized contract management. As you know, Bramasol has been involved with a large number of implementations of the RAR module, both within ECC environment and now moving on to the S4 platform. And the vast majority of our clients have gone down a path of managing all changes within data of the RAR contract via changes in the source documents. So we're talking about sales orders, contracts, and other operational documents upstream, which points us to a scenario which is suited best for optimized contract management, where the processing with an RAR is mostly a background processing with little UI interaction. Obviously, like you heard Gerold say, future releases will bring parity between optimized contract management and what is now called classic contract management, with UI capabilities within the RAR UI. So mostly changes, things such as changing performance obligations, changing values on the contract, moving things around, manual combination. However, that again, the trend seems to be folks would rather manage that upfront in the source document and have an end-to-end auditable trail of changes from the source document all the way through posting. So when you think about this feature, think about your scenarios which are like that. So telecom, high tech are an example. Large number of similar contracts, a large volume of contracts going through the system where performance is important, data quality is important, obviously, processing speed and posting, and most management of changes is done upfront in a source document. One more thing to add to what Gerold said as far as using classic and optimized contract management concurrently, we obviously see scenarios where folks have certain lower volume scenarios, perhaps a larger contract that's more unique from customer to customer. At this point, we feel that is more suited to the current classic, what's called classic contract management, because it gives you the rich UI capability to manage that contract within the ARIA UI with specific contract changes that you might want to add. So underlying all of this, look at your scenarios, evaluate which one is suited better for optimized and classic, keeping in mind that obviously the roadmap for a product is to bring it to as close of a parity as possible between optimized and classic contract management. Next slide, Jim, please.
Actually, Jacek, before you go there, so I think you hit on several points from a technical aspect, but as I kind of watched Gerold go through his slides, I think one of the areas that we look at with clients, and I think every client has been unique in my mind, as to the, what finance does, what IT does, and how they work in RAR as a system, and how that architecture is evolving. And what I liked what I saw within the newer optimized contract management is the visibility, the integration of information at fingertips, and really catering to an end user. It is there, but as I said, in our implementation projects, it does vary from end to end. We have finance teams that are heavily in RAR and working RAR, and we have other finance teams that are largely looking at the results coming out of RAR through reporting or through some type of extracts, and leaving the RAR module running pretty much to itself and expecting IT to make the changes. So I think, as clients look at this, I think that's another consideration is, where do I want to end up? Not only from a technical standpoint, going from ECC to S4 and the classic optimization in RAR, but also from an operations point of view in terms of who's doing what, how they're monitoring, and as we saw where SAP is taking this, a greater access to integrated information and being able to react and take action. So I think, as clients or prospective clients see this today, if you're looking at a project going forward, that operational layer is critical, as well as the technical roadmap that's ahead of you.
Hey, Steve and Jacek, questions are popping up, and there's one that relates to this slide. Is there a rule of thumb on what constitutes low volume versus high volume, or is it situational with every customer?
It will be situational, because performance within the tool, like in any IT system, is also affected by the complexity of the contract. So I could perhaps have a large volume, we're talking multiple thousands, 10,000, 20,000 a month of contracts running through, which have one or two simple line items running through, right? I could have similar numbers of contracts which have now multiple line items of multiple rules within itself, different allocation logic, leading link POBs, all those things. So there's definitely a complexity also aspect to there. It's rather hard to put a rule of thumb of a number on it. You need to look at specifically in your scenarios in one point, and consider as a benchmark, for example, if you are a current RAR user or have talked to current RAR users, look at the performance of that particular scenario in the system and look whether that scenario that you would want to maybe address, given the features of optimized contract management.
And here again, I think we see a maturity in our clients with their roadmap as they come in and basically implemented to meet 606 compliance, but now they're looking at, well, what do I do in my S4 journey? And moving from an ECC where largely to make the date and to get 606 compliance in place, we dealt with legacy, and we dealt with legacy practices, legacy configurations, legacy architectures in some places. as we move into S4 and we're reconsidering a transformation or restructuring your order to cash. How you structure that, how you structure your contracts, and to Jacek's point, an eye towards performance going forward. I think we're also seeing that in our clients, and I think that is unique to every person, where every client where they're coming from, and ultimately their alignment to the SAP roadmap from a product and function standpoint.
Excellent, thank you. Ready for the next slide?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So another point that Gerold made that we want to stress on is that currently the functionality is targeted towards go-forward scenarios, which is something you need to keep in mind if your organization is on a roadmap to S4 from a current ECC environment with RAR. Obviously, the current recommendation from SAP, the standing is if your migration to S4 is mostly a technical migration with little or no changes in processing, it's better to implement RAR first, because legacy functionality such as SD-based revenue recognition is no longer available in S4. Once you employ RAR first on ECC, then the S4 movement, especially for the revenue recognition area, becomes more of a technical change rather than a re-implementation. With a current optimized contract management functionality, that becomes a little more difficult because there are some limitations in the way we would do. Obviously, you cannot do classic to new, as Gerold has said. There are some changes there, as well as also migration. So that's something to keep in mind in looking at this functionality if your roadmap is to move some existing in-flight contracts. Now, that might sound very much like a limitation, but what we have seen out with our clients is most folks take an opportunity to optimize the processes as we move from the ECC platform to the S4 platform. And that process optimization, unfortunately, sometimes drives a change in both order to cash processing as well as the RAR functionality. So you are, at the end of the day, still facing maybe not a full reimplementation, but at least an enhancement type of activity to connect the legacy with go forward. That could also be an opportunity to implement optimized contract management, because then it becomes an incremental activity, rather than a brand new implementation. So unfortunately, the message again is really it's scenario specific. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all roadmap currently, but those are the factors you should consider, right? The benefits of optimized contract management going forward with a roadmap in mind of parity with classic eventually being there as well, but for now moving away and perhaps reaping the benefits of processing, of performance processing, and again keeping most of this data within RAR as background activities versus hands-on touch points within the RAR UI. Steve, if you want to add it.
Yeah, the only other I come back to is just the maturity step in my mind, because as I look at our clients, initially we had to hit the date for compliance, had to align with what their auditor said, and then as we move forward, and these companies get a hold of RAR and understand RAR and get it, basically into the day-to-day operations. When they consider S4 and they look at that transformation, it's not just an optimization of some of the ECC processes or simplification of that. It's also rethinking, how they bundle products, how they go to market, and we're seeing those types of drivers come into the architectural decisions that are being made around this going forward. And to Jacek's point, either add or put different dimensions into that migration consideration as to how it's going to move forward. And I think that's another big. If you're putting your roadmap together, that's another big consideration, because we do see people taking advantage of that. Obviously, one of the reasons to go to S4, to have better integration of those opportunities, and to really think of, for many companies, how they're going to market yesterday versus tomorrow. So we're here to help if you guys need it. But as Jacek said, I think the consideration around the future state architecture and the migration approach is critical. We see that in every client, regardless of where they're at in this maturity journey.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions out there?
Yes, just let me touch on contact information. This will be in the video if you download it, or you can always find contact information on our website. But these are key contacts: Steve, who was just speaking, and Mike Curry, who would be happy to help you with the acquisition process. Now, regarding questions, there are a couple. There's a question, does optimized RAR manage portfolio of contracts? So I think maybe, is there any difference between optimized or classic with regard to how they would manage a portfolio?
If I may take this.
Yes, sure.
So there is no specific functionality with respect to portfolios in the optimized contract management. So you would need to treat that in the same way as with the classic contract management. Right, so usually this kind of collection of different similar contracts into one portfolio, this is usually taken and done outside, and as a previous step before you then, or this is maybe just one of the options you have, so you could do this in a first step outside revenue accounting and just forward then this kind of portfolio to revenue accounting.
Thank you. And then one other question: if a customer is unsure about their S4 journey as far as timing and when they're going to be actively implementing, are there any rules of thumb for what they should be doing now as far as their decisions? Or is it based totally on the different functionality between classic and optimized?
Gerold, do you want to comment there? Or Jacek, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, I could comment this. So we sort of target feature parity to a large extent. So if you like to make use out of the advantages of the optimized contract management, like the nicer UI, the additional options with analytics, and possibly also additional features, and if you have time to wait, then you could also you could wait. Now we are also looking maybe at some point in time with a little migration between the classical contract management to the optimized, but only under certain circumstances. So if those features are comparable, yeah, and what you have done with the contract. So basically, those would need also to be streamlined contracts, not having experienced changes which we would not handle in the optimized contract management. So here I would quote my little disclaimer from the beginning, but that might be also a scenario where you could look into.
Excellent, thank you.
Hey, Jim?
I think it's, yes.
I was just going to chime in there. So I think from a broader context, if I just, and I'm just going to just rule of thumb off of my mind here for these. So clients that are still in ECC that have either completed their initial RAR implementation, and when I say completed, they don't have a volume that's off that hasn't been fully migrated through. They're basically on RAR. They believe they're 606 compliant. They're working with their auditor, and they're basically stabilizing. For those clients, we highly recommend that you stay in step with the releases coming out from SAP, and you're upgrading your system as you go here. And Bramasol can definitely help with that. But that keeps you moving in the right direction, and as well as kind of stabilizing you on the ECC or the classic version of this. And then, as Gerold alluded to, then it's time to sit down and really plan out that roadmap from an architecture standpoint, from a business standpoint, because we're seeing clients as they transition from ECC to S4 to really substantiate their S4 business case, getting more creative as to how they're integrating bundles, products, services, subscriptions into their contracts. So that's an area that does take a lot of thinking and many stakeholders at the table to run through that scenario. Once that's done, then really take a look at what's changing in RAR and what potentially is changing in S4, and build that into your S4 delivery plan or your program as you're moving forward. And again, even there, we see more emphasis on the traditional back end than we do on the new user interface, whether it's Fiori or whether it's embedded analytics or even integrated analytics. To what Gerold hinted at, that possibility is out there. So we see potentially longer planning cycles, or I would say greater focus on what tomorrow can look like and how to structure that and get it into a roadmap, not only to meet your company's desired strategies and that, but also to align with SAP's product roadmap successfully.
So stick with stability, keep your options open, and do your planning before you step off.
Yeah, that's where we're seeing, I would say, clients that aren't ready to make that jump today. That's what they're doing to stabilize where they're at and really understand and get stakeholders aligned to how they're using the product today, whether it's just proving it to their finance team, whether it's proving it to their auditors now, and review and getting more in depth in it, or with that foundation, planning tomorrow's change, new products, new paths to market, whether subscription based or whether traditional contract.
Excellent, thank you. Looks like there's one last question, and it is, does optimized RAR still require migration of the legacy data?
If I may take this, of course, also the optimized contract management. So if you sort of use revenue accounting for the first time and you like to bring in data, you still do it with the ordinary migration. So this is the same, because you need to bring revenue accounting into a position that it knows what has been already posted in the legacy system and what is the starting point for the allocation. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. That's all the questions for today. In wrap up, I just want to say thanks again to all today's presenters, and a special thanks to all of you who attended the webinar. We hope you gained some new insights during the session. And just a note, looking ahead, you or a colleague may also want to attend next week's webinar on the 30th, which will focus on treasury and the use of Payment Factory to optimize cash management and streamline your end-to-end holistic payment processing system. So that should be a good one. Look on our website. If you haven't registered, you may want to sign up for it. And thank you all again for attending, and have a great day.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Gerold.
Thank you. Goodbye.